Party every day. Let's get this started. Woohoo! Poncho off, recording on. Okay. Welcome back, ladies and gents, to the successful continuation of Milk and Bookies Season 1, Episode 2. Today's segment and overall mood will be thankfully more lighthearted and positive than the previous episode, which is surprising because the theme of the book are significantly darker. I'm sure your undedicated but determined narrative and random person who's giving their unwanted opinion. You can't see it, but I'm doing finger guns. In other words, your swanky-dinky host is back and ready to delve into another book. Like I mentioned in the farewell segment of the previous episode, today's subject is Hannah West's Kingdom of Ash and Briars, a magical novel that involves magic, disguise, and romance. In terms of those three nouns, it sounds scarily similar to Newt's Emerald, which I covered in episode 1 of season 1. However, I can assure you that they are infinitely contrasting with merely overlapping principles. Milk and Bookies is driving into the generic young adult novels head on, and nobody's really sure how to feel about that, right? It was unanticipated that we would start off with two very basic pieces of literature, but both have an unexpected amount of components to analyze. Therefore, we should all remove our possible presumptions about YA novels and actually investigate into the wonderful books that have been chosen thus far. With that said, it is no doubt synopsis time. Start quote. Bristol, an orphaned kitchen maid, lands in a gritty fairy tale gone wrong when she discovers she is an electromancer with a knack for shape-shifting. An ancient breed of immortal magic beings, electromancers have been winnowed down to merely 2, now 3, after centuries of bloody conflict in the realm. Their gifts are fraught with responsibility, and 16-year-old Bristol is torn between two paths. Should she vow to seek the good of the world, to protect and serve mortals? Or should she follow the strength of her power, even if it leads to unknown territories or terrors? She draws on her ability to disguise herself as a man to infiltrate a prince's band of soldiers and masquerades as a fairy godmother to shield a cursed princess. But time is running out. As an army of dark creatures grows closer, Bristol faces a supernatural war. To save the kingdoms, Bristol must find the courage to show her true form. Building on homages to Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, Jane Austen's Emma, and the Chinese legend of Hua Mulan, Hannah West makes a spectacular debut. End quote. It's pretty action-packed and seems quite intense from just the overview. Curiosity-piquing, no? I mentioned magic, disguise, and romance in the greetings, but there's so much more to Kingdom of Ash and Briars than that. Action, fantasy, fairy tales, and politics are all recurring themes in this refreshing and gratefully fast-paced story. Considering all these additional factors, it has become significantly harder to pinpoint just 3 themes from a longer, more complex book compared to Newt's Emerald. Hence, it's been decided to include 5 themes with shorter description to maintain roughly the same length and to work on my concision, which I find to be a reappearing personal issue in my writing. This is not my personal therapy class, so let's move on. The lengthened themes consist of 1, betrayal, 2, hiding, 3, love, 4, power, and 5, fantasy. So these are quite broad themes. Let's get right into it. Number 1, betrayal. What's a good story without some betrayal, backstabbing, and fake personas? It sounds awfully like 6th grade, really. Except they aren't immature and overcomplicated betrayals. Rather, it's a convoluted definition of betrayal in itself. One would think that a main character is revealed to be an antagonist and thus result in betrayal, but that is surprisingly not the case. While that has happened, it has been in a more gradual and realistic manner. It began with Tamaris. I actually have no idea how to pronounce her name along with many other words, because 1, I'm uncultured, 2, it doesn't specify in the book, and 3, I don't have the motivation nor drive to be researching into the investigation myself. So Tamaris, another powerful sorceress or alicromancer that was kind and cool but had conflicts with the other alicromancer, Brack. I don't know, his name's Brack. It's gonna be hard to keep track of. Anyways, Tamaris seems to be a progressive character who holds a hard stance, which is a debate term for not choosing the path or opinion that suits everyone, and chooses the hard but apparently right choice. Tamaris wants alicromancers to be the ultimate rulers of Nicera, or the world, who knows. Brack, in response, is all like, how about no? And it all seems like a serious but temporary argument until Tamaris suddenly goes into maximum overdrive, loses it, goes berserk, and tries to kill everyone in the mountain village. It's a better developed event in the book, I swear. I'm just being bad at recounting it. Either way, it was a sudden act, but at the same time, expected. I would describe it as disappointed but not surprised. Betrayal count 1. Ding. Oh, but we're not done yet with betrayals from Tamaris. She later curses the continent and the newborn princess of one of the biggest nations. Betrayal count 2. Oh, and Tamaris also lures the main character, Bristol, and her gang into the middle of nowhere on a goose chase that results in one of her friends being killed. Betrayal count 3. Then some king betrays a political argument that is more moral than anything, resulting in some political conflict that is mentioned like 20 times. It was a small betrayal, so small that I cannot even pinpoint when or where it took place, or what exactly took place in the first, place. However, it leads Bristol to disguise as someone else and whiz around doing some political sabotaging. Betrayal count 4. That's not even counting all the times Bristol, who's literally the main character, betrayed the cities and countries that she was residing in by using her shapeshifting and playing the nobles, dukes, captains, princes, soldiers, kings, lords, and townfolk. One of her biggest betrayals was when she left the Realm Alliance, a group of people fighting against a threat no one believed in. I've lost count of how many betrayals now. I could go on, and I'm well aware that you get the idea. So the point is that the majority of the book revolved around the many betrayals that were executed by multiple characters, sometimes consecutively at different severities. Without this foundation of betrayal and deceit, there would be no plot, drama, or adventure to build on. But the second theme is hiding. This theme description will actually be short like I intended. The clandestine is our main character, Bristol, who has the power to shapeshift. She is told not to reveal her identity by her mentor for her safety, he said. For the safety of the newborn princess that she was protecting against the powerful antagonist. So she doesn't show her true self after the first chapter, at all. In the first half of the book, a lot of the hooks keeping me reading were Bristol playing around with everybody and coming up with clever schemes to hide her identity and address issues secretly through hidden manipulation. I assumed that it was a large source of entertainment for many readers and really showed the amusing, intelligent side of our main character. Something so addicting and revealing was bound to be a main theme that set up the feeling and community for future scenes. The next theme is love. Now, don't get this confused with romance. There is so much love in this story between brothers, sisters, lovers, mentors, and students, etc. Because I'm a low-key Shadowhunters TV show fan, love is thought to make you weak, to give you motivation to give up things for the ones you love, to break your walls. But sometimes, someone might tell you that it actually makes you stronger. Emotions drive you to do things you never could have done without that flair in you, good or bad. Both of these interpretations of love can be found in Kingdom of Ash and Briars, which deserves some recognition. I find that either only one is included or they both are, but only one is executed well. The love Tamaris had for Brack drove her to near insanity when it wasn't reciprocated, and hey, she became the antagonist that almost killed everyone. Just saying, man. If love or the lack of returned love is what gives the entire novel a storyline, I would say it's got to be a main theme trying to be portrayed. Not to mention the love between protagonists that lead them to defeating the antagonist in the end. Cliché? Yes. Very much so. Appreciated? Yeah. It fits well with the theme, and it's a fluent component of the characters and the story as a whole, so let's leave it at that. The fourth theme is power. In my last episode, I talked about how wealth shaped the society and tone of the book, but let's address that power. I would play the will.i.am song, but copyright, guys, so power is a pretty big deal. I would even go as far as to say that Kingdom of Ash and Briars revolved around the theme of power, literally orbited around this singular theme. Literally, the antagonist becomes the antagonist because she wanted power and her crush, I really hesitate to use that word, but her crush didn't. The protagonist then spends months or years trying to clean up the mess of power between three governing families when she herself gains the most power by being the mole in every government. Power, man, it's one hell of a drug. The last theme is fantasy. You might not know it, but Kingdom of Ash and Briars is a twist on the fairy tale classic Sleeping Beauty. But it doesn't focus much on the fairy tale, but instead the causes and effects of the main idea of it. Instead of dedicating chapters and chapters or lots of description towards the actual sleeping princess, just the dormant state of the main protagonist, it focuses much more on why it happened, what type of benefits or detriments it could lead to, or it has been the result of. My other themes were all principles that supported the story or vice versa, but I like to think of fantasy as part of the overall book. It's one with the book itself. I guess you could say that it's a fantasy book, but that's not what I'm hinting at. Not at all. I would just like to express that the creativity behind what the author has believed to be the truth behind the classic is unintentionally contributing to the magical aura that the novel has. The magic, the fairy tale, the creativity, the shape-shifting, the land of the dead, it's all a continuous cycle to keep the fantasy of Kingdom of Ash and Briars alive. In conclusion, love and betrayal go hand in hand in Kingdom of Ash and Briars, where backstabbing and emotion drives characters to do and think the unbelievable. It's a fantasy novel that revolves around power as a whole and the power of hiding in particular. It's a mouthful. It's the second, perhaps significantly lesser Marco Shakespeare storyline? I don't know, give it a go. Many reviews have claimed that the Kingdom of Ash and Briars was too rushed, but I can't argue against it because if I read it after reading Newt's Emerald, where nothing will seem rushed, compare it. I would really have to say it would be a biased view. Number one, because the contrast between Newt's Emerald and any other decent book out there, and also it's been quite a while since I've reviewed this book, so I can't give a full-fledged and valid review of the book. Nevertheless, even the history of the world, I guess, was more well-paced than Newt's Emerald, but you know what, that's for another time. I would like to bring to your attention that there's a fine line between rushed and fast-paced here. While I do admit that many aspects of Kingdom of Ash and Briars were unexplained and seemed rather unclear, I enjoyed the fast pace that the novel sported. Once or twice I had to go back and reread a few parts that seemed rushed, yes, and be forced to connect the pieces rather than have the author appropriately explain them to me, yes, but otherwise I can't even utter a comment of distaste. The book had me pretty hooked, and I swear that I could barely put it down. I loved the themes and how it was written. It was an intense story that shocked me time and time again. However, I do admit that in many instances the direction of the plot wasn't rushed per se, just unexplained. Whether or not this was left to the interpretation of the readers is a separate matter, but from my experience it shouldn't have been left as such simply because it was so unclear. It was more of interpreting whether or not this was up for interpretation than actually interpreting it to your own views. So that was an underlying current of confusion that I think the book could have done without. The pace itself was fine, refreshing actually, but the actual description of not just the scenes but plot was confusing. Spoiler alert! When Anthony goes to the water, dies, then Bristol's Elysian stone disintegrates, and then her dad is actually one of the most powerful necromancers and actually isn't dead, but then leaves everyone. But then, okay, do you see where I'm going with this? I made minimal sense in the moment and makes less and less sense as time progresses and more complications to the plot are added. In addition to that, I find that it was cliche in so many ways. For example, none of Bristol's progress was documented or explained, but she seemed like a Mary Sue, or a character that is perfect and has forced flaws for a long part of the start of the book. Slowly, her true flaws and personality revealed itself, so that was a relief, but the other aspects remained Mary Sue-esque, where everything worked out almost perfectly, and when it didn't, it seemed forced just to make it a more nuanced book instead of it actually flowing well and balancing pros and cons of characters and of the plot. Nothing was overly surprising, only shocking when it wasn't explained fluently, but was thrown at the audience. However, all these holes and gaps and flaws didn't last for the entirety of the book, and in retrospect could easily be overlooked, so I will give Hannah West that. My final conclusion would be that the greatest flaws were in the flaws themselves, or the lack of well-portrayed flaws. There were similar, less prominent issues such as unexplained character development and plot backstory, but overall, the magic, the writing, the romance, the friendship, the mystery, and the action could easily overshadow the flaws. For Hannah West's debut book, it's pretty noteworthy. So like I said, this review has been more lighthearted. No, I'm keeping the questions just as lighthearted and positive as well. So, discussion question number 1. How was the development of the romance between Bristol and Anthony? It started off great. It was a forbidden love, but not in the generic cringy way. It was the choice of Bristol to keep her gender and identity a secret, and it was ultimately her choice to choose that suffering. Her feelings for him grew and then started to grow a lovable relationship as friends. Sad face. However, when she did disclose her identity, or rather when she was forced to reveal it, it wasn't as dramatic as it should have been. This is because apparently Anthony, quote-unquote, expected it. No. I don't find this to be a valid resolution because there was no foreshadowing to it. There should have been more moments where Bristol suspected that Anthony knew, or descriptions of Anthony knowing, and suddenly they're in love, kissing, and man, it was quick. And I'm not qualified to say what a relationship should and should not look like because I'm young, so I don't need to be covering that. But, did that mean he thought it was her, wasn't sure, but fell for her anyway, while she was still a man, and he just knew all along without showing any signs? The first question can be ignored if he's gay, but that would need foreshadowing too, no? I don't want to be heteronormative, but I felt like the type of correlation between him knowing and the final result of them being together was pretty brittle. Man, it would have been great if he was gay, but hey, that's none of my business. Just wish there was a little bit more diversity. Discussion number 2. Question number 2. Were the logistics of a necromancer powers acceptable? Personally, I would say no, and I don't know anything about writing fantasy, so I can't say that my opinion is warranted in the slightest. But have you heard of selective memory, where a person only remembers what they want to remember? Yeah, it was like that, except with magical powers. It's like they could only do beneficial things from a magical society according to magical rules, but they couldn't do others while following the same rules because, well, just because, apparently. And the stones, don't get me started on the stones. I don't understand their value if you could use your powers without them. Just weaker. I mean, that seems like a pretty pathetic loophole, and Bristol had her Elysian stone disintegrated, but she still won the major war, which is the climax of the novel. I can't tell whether this is a Mary Sue incident or an necromancer power logistics incident. And the fact that I can't differentiate two major flaws is a major flaw in itself. But please feel free to answer any of the questions in the comment section, as always, as I've said in these 2 episodes. Yikes. Hey, more is on its way. I'm even producing this in advance because I'm cool and organized, and school is driving me insane, so I have to do it early. I'm crying in the club. With that, Milk and Bookies Season 1 Episode 2 is coming to a close. Thank you all for tuning in. Hey, that's a pretty podcasty word, eh? That's a pretty Canadian word, yay. I'm from Canada, everybody, PSA. I've upheld my expectation for a positive vibe, and I've really been motivated to accomplish this series, so let's hope this doesn't take a huge hit, and let's hope this lasts, everyone. Once again, it's time for farewell. Bye-bye. And a new adventure in the next episode. Please feel free to read Fahrenheit 451, a literary classic by Ray Bradbury. This has been Milk and Bookies Season 1 Episode 2. I'm Cheryl, your swanky danky host, and I'm looking forward to Episode 3. Actually, that was a French accent. It should have been more Spanish. Tres. I'm not good at languages. Milk and Bookies, Cheryl signing out. Peace.